to simplify the QuickBooks payroll process in 2016. My name is Kelly Batchoffner, and I am the Relationship Manager here at EBS Associates. Unfortunately, our president, Denise Loder-Cook, will be unable to participate in our webinar this afternoon due to a recent sports injury her husband experienced. She will not be present today. Ryan, we're sending you our love for your surgery this afternoon. Now back to the webinar. EBS Associates is a nationally recognized and proven industry leader providing business with full charge bookkeeping services, project accounting services, financial controller services, data migration services, software implementations, and consulting and training. We are recognized by Intuit as a premier reseller for our expertise in technology and solution integrations for businesses. Within the Intuit Premier Reseller Program, we are renowned for our payroll experience and knowledge. I am very happy to introduce our EBS Employee of the Year in 2015, Joy Huffman. Joy is an Executive Account Manager at EBS and has years of payroll management experience. She is an advanced QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online Pro Advisor, as well as holds many certifications for the third-party applications that integrate with QuickBooks, such as T-Sheets. Joy will be demonstrating how you can make payroll less stressful in 2016 by implementing the Intuit payroll services. Joy, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. That's awesome. I'm so excited to be with everyone today and trust that you're doing well in this new year. I wanted to just check a few things. First of all, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can, Joy. Thank you.
And can you hear me okay as well?
I hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so we're ready to get started. So we're going to go over some basics of payroll and how you would set different things up. And if you have any questions, please feel free to submit those as you were previously told. And one of the gals will interrupt me if needed, so that way we can make sure that we're clear on everything that we need to be for today. So I am created a data file, High Rock Construction, for today's demo purposes. And we're just going to kind of walk through some of the basics of payroll setup. Now, depending upon the payroll service that you choose, whether it's enhanced payroll or assisted payroll, which will be the two we'll mainly discuss today, you would need to contact Intuit to get those set up. You need to get a payroll key, and that information will have to be put in before you have access to all of these different things here. Once you have that information and you've worked with them to get that set up, or you've worked with an EBS associate person to get that set up, then you should be ready to go. So I'm going to show you a few things. We have our Employee Center. So and to get into that, you just go into Employees, Employee Center. And in here, this is where you're going to see a list of the employees that you have set up. Now for today, I set up one employee, and I've already run a payroll in it, so that way we can kind of see the differences of how everything works. When you are setting up employees, you're going to need to have some information. And if you notice in the original slide, there is a payroll checkup list that you need to have, and it'll give you those things that you need, like a W-4 form, a direct deposit form, things like that you just need to have set up so that way you can do that. So I put in just some basic information on Boz Loader, and we'll go through that, and we'll kind of fill out some more detail now. So if I'm ready to enter information on my employee, I'm going to double-click on him. And in here, I will put in his first name, last name, and a middle initial if he has one. I'm just going to include a K, and you'll see how that changes here as I print it on the check. I'll enter Social Security number, the gender, date of birth, and this information is important because a lot of times you'll need this in the future. So I'm going to put in 12/7/1995 as the date of birth. Marital status, if that's something I want to track. A U.S. citizen, we'll say yes. If I'm tracking ethnicity, I can do that as well. If they are disabled. And then I-9 form. This is really important. There are laws regarding keeping I-9 forms, and so you want to make sure that you have those on file. The expiration date depends upon the forms that they gave you. Normally it expires the same time that a license would driver's license would expire. And then if you're capturing also military veteran information. So this is nice because it's kind of like a little bit of an HR tool, and it helps you keep up with the requirements. Under our address and contact, this is pretty obvious. People know how to put in addresses and information. What's nice is you can have all kinds of different phone numbers, emails. You can also, if you capture Facebook, Twitter, depending on the type of business, that might be something that you'd want to have. In addition, this emergency contact information is invaluable. I actually worked for a company where, and I was working with them, we were electricians, and we had a guy in the field that got zapped a little too hard, and we just spent a devil of a time trying to find his wife's contact information. It sure would have been nice if they'd had this feature and we had it right here. So definitely use this, because when you really need it, it's nice to have one place to go to. And you can capture it if someone's not married. There's all kinds of different people that you can contact. Additional information, some people give employee ID numbers or they have billing rate numbers. You can also customize fields. So if I wanted to capture, like let's say, for example, on our employees, not our customers, but on our employees, we wanted to capture like spouse's name, or if they had kids' names or dogs' names or whatever, you could capture that information as well. Or if they had licensing information that you wanted to capture, you could do that. Okay, so let's get into the core of why we're really here, which is about running the payroll. So this is where our payroll setup comes in. You can set up payroll schedules if you want to. You're going to select how often you pay them, if it's bi-weekly, weekly, monthly, daily. I don't know if I've ever worked anywhere that pays daily, but I know that there are some companies that do. Bi-weekly is traditionally what you would choose. And then you're going to put in their information. Now, when you're setting up payroll items, there's two ways you can do it. One is a quick add way, which we're going to show you, and then you also can go into the list and set it up to a payroll item list. So I currently have right now set up hourly wage and hourly wage OT. I'm going to use a quick add feature, and I'm going to add in holiday wage. And what it'll do, this is called a quick add, it'll say, this payroll item is not found. What would you like to do? I'm going to go ahead and choose setup. Excuse me. It's going to be an hourly wage. This is going to be holiday pay. I don't have that as an option because it's not categorized separately from sick or vacation. I'm going to say next. I've already entered the name of it. And then I'm going to choose where this goes to. So if I want it all going to payroll expenses, I can do that. Or if I'm tracking my time separately by, excuse me, for job costing purposes, like my direct cost versus my administrative, I could do that as well. And now we're just going to leave that in payroll expenses.
And Joy, if I could just interrupt just real quick, we do have a couple of folks in the audience who have indicated that they're having a hard time hearing you, that you sound muffled. And I didn't know maybe if you could reposition your headset a little bit so that, because you are sounding a little bit muffled, so if you could reposition your headset just a little bit so that we're make sure that we're as clear as possible.
Oh, yes. Is that any better? Are you able to hear me better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. I will keep trying to make sure that I'm doing that. I'm sorry for the inconvenience there. Hopefully everyone can hear me a little better now. Okay. Yes, please interrupt me if you can't hear, because I want to be able to be as clear as possible. Okay, so we have set up a holiday wage, and then if I paid them the same rate, which traditionally would be the case, I'm going to put 22 on there. And so that is how I would go about setting up doing a quick add for a payroll item. In addition, we have additions, deductions, and company contributions. This would be like for health insurances, simple IRAs, wage garnishments, those types of things. Again, I can do a quick add right from here and add that. So we're going to go ahead and set up a wage garnishment for this employee. And I can click on Add New, or I could have just started typing wage garnishment if I wanted to. This is going to be a deduction. I'm going to say Next. And the way I like to do mine is I always put WG in front of it because they all gather together in one place. And let's say that this person has a wage garnishment that they owe to Home Depot. Now, I'm not going to track this these expenses by job because this is not an expense to my company. This is coming out of the employee's check. I'm going to say next. So the agency I would be paying this to would be, oops, let's see if we can type that correctly, is Home Depot. And I can also do a quick add of that company there. I would have an identifying number that would have come on the wage garnishment form. I'm going to enter that here. And then on my liability account, I'm going to put this down to my garnishments and other liabilities. And I'm going to say next. There should be no tax tracking on this. And most of this will default. I will not normally have to change this at all. And cut this asset quality, calculate based on quantity. So if I was doing it based like setting up an addition or something where I wanted to see 2 or 3 at $50 rate, I could do that. Or if I'm using it based on hours. In this case, it's neither. It's a flat amount. I'm going to go ahead and say next. Our wage garnishment is going to come off of the net pay, not the gross pay. I'm going to say next. And then if I have the default rate, if they say they want $50 a month, then I can do, or $50 as paycheck, I can do 50. And then I can put in a limit type of 300 is the entire amount, and it is a one-time limit. And so I'm going to say finish. And that was just letting me know I can set up a scheduled payment for that if I want to. So that is how I would enter a wage garnishment. Are you guys able to hear me okay?
We do have some feedback from the audience that they're still struggling a little bit, Joy. So I'm wondering if we could just maybe try the speakers.
Okay, let's try that instead. I'm switched to my speakerphone. Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that you are
Joy,
loud.
that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm sure sorry that we're having that issue. I will make a note of that for my headphones for the future. And I will try to make sure that I speak clearly enough. Okay. So we have put in a wage garnishment. We talked about putting that as a one-time limit. You can do that also for an annual limit for like medical insurances. So if you annually were paying out, like let's say $14,000, you can put that limit on it so that way it never goes over the annual limit amount. Okay. If I'm going to set up a direct deposit, this customer wants to be, this employee wants to be under direct deposit. I'm going to click on the direct deposit. In this particular case, I have not already set up my subscription. So what I would have to do in order to be able to do that is I would have to put this information in here. So they were going to want to know about my payroll checking account. And so I'm going to click OK. And then it is going to say your direct deposit is active and now ready to use. So if I've never used it before, I can go ahead and just set that up pretty quickly. It doesn't take that long. You saw me just do that right now by just telling them that. Then I can go in, and it was also bringing down my latest payroll update. There's a lot of those, by the way, this time of year. There's always a lot right at the beginning of the year. So now if my direct deposit is available for me to use, I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then what I would do is enter the bank name, account number, account type, which should be checking or savings, and then the routing number. Now, if this particular employee wanted to put me information to 2 banks, I could split the payment and do the first amount. Let's say they wanted to do $200 to one account, and then the remainder of the balance would go into that second account. So that is an option that I can do for my employees. We're just going to go ahead and leave this for today and not set up direct deposit, but that's how you would do that. Your taxes, we're going to go into. This is what should be matching your W-4 that they would have turned in. So in this case, we have single or married or don't withhold. We're going to go ahead and say Bob is a single, but he has 2 allowances. If I wanted to put in extra withholding, that's where I would put that information in. Now, traditionally, you're not going to change these. They should default to what would be required for the typical employee. State, I'm going to answer where I work, and then the state subject to withholding. So in some cases, I may work in California, but I live in Oregon. So I would have two different answers here. So you want to make sure that you're really paying attention to the questions. Again, if I have single 2 over here, I'm going to have 2 allowances over here, and then also I have single here as well. On my other tab, these would be the additional taxes that you would have, like WBF, or in Oregon we have TriMet and we have LTD. Now, you traditionally would not be subject to both TriMet and LTD, but QuickBooks will default to bringing all of them in. So if that's the case, just make sure you remove what is not necessary. You will need to enter rate for your WBF, which is 0.016 and 0.017 for the company side. Okay. Are there any questions on any of that we've gone over so far, and are you able to hear me well?
Joy, we can hear you perfectly fine. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. All right. The next section we're going to look at is your sick and vacation. Now, as many of you may know, the sick leave laws changed a lot this year, and so you need to really be paying attention to what it is that you need to track going into this next year. If you do have 10 or more employees, sick leave is required to be paid. Please contact your attorney or an HR representative and make sure that you are set up and complying with the laws. Once you know what those are, then you'll come into this section and fill out what it is that you're going to do. The nice thing that we have here is you can accrue these on a different basis. So if you decided to, one of the options for the law is to front load 40 hours at the beginning of the year. So I could put 40 hours straight in here at the beginning of the year. Well, if I don't want to do that, I can also accrue them on every hour on every paycheck. So that's a nice feature. I can reset my hours at the beginning of the year, and I can say when we're going to actually begin accruing sick time. Same thing with vacation. So go ahead and go through those tabs to make sure that everything's set up the way that it needs to be. And that's the bulk of your payroll right there. The rest of this information, this is about employment, and this can become a nice little tracking tool if somebody takes a leave of absence or once you terminate them, and the different reasons. You can have this information here if you did severance, etc. I like to at least fill this out down here if they're full or part-time. We're going to say full-time if he's exempt from overtime or non-exempt. He's an hourly employee. They're traditionally non-exempt. And if they're a key employee, which doesn't mean that whether or not they're important, that has more to do with whether or not they're an officer or an owner. So I'm going to say no. And then there's a workman's comp. If I have this turned on, I'm able to track workman's comp throughout the year, which is a nice feature. So that's how I would go about setting up an employee. I know that's a lot of detailed information, but we want to make sure that that part's done because that's what makes the rest of this flow. Okay, so once my employee is set up, and I would have anywhere from 1 to up to a couple hundred employees, and it's time for me to run payroll from the same place in the Employee Center or going straight into the Payroll Center, I can click on this tab, or if I was in my Employee Center, I just click on the tab for payroll. So they are connected. This is where I would go to run my payroll. And we're going to go ahead and pay this employee. So I'm going to click on Pay Employee, and it gives me that there's a new message. Do I want to view this message now? We're going to say no. Traditionally, you always want to say yes, so that way you can see what your latest messages are. But I've already seen this one. I know that it has to do with the fact that we've got MLK Day coming up. Okay, so pay period ends. I'm going to make sure that the correct date is set in here. Since I'm going to be making this payroll date as of today, I'm going to run through the Sunday of the last date, and then my payroll date will be the 14th. And I'm going to put on here 14th. I'm going to also be able to change my checking account. If I wanted the payroll checking account versus the operating checking account, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to check all of the employees that I'm going to be paying. In this case, it's just the one. And I'm going to go ahead and open that up so I can look at the details. Now, I had entered my time onto my time card, which we're going to go over in a few minutes, and I'll be able to show you that. But I want to show you that this information all pulls in from the time card. And so I'm able to see that I worked 24 hours on this particular job. Now, the things that I had set up prior to for my employee, they come in automatically, like that health insurance, the wage garnishment, etc. Okay? That information will come straight in on here, on this check. And I will go through each employee, make sure everything's correct, looking in each box. I'm going to save and close. And when I've looked at them all, I'm going to go ahead and push continue and then create paycheck. Now, a lot of people get really nervous about hitting that button because they think that they've sent everything to Intuit and that everything is gone. No, we can still edit our paychecks if we need to. We haven't sent anything to Intuit at this point. So what I'm going to want to do is close here, and then I'm going to go ahead and run a payroll summary to verify that I am paying them the correct way. So I'm going to go into report. And when I say paying them the correct way, I am talking about paying them. I'm verifying the hours that I put in were correctly, and also verifying that their taxes pulled out in the correct way. I'm going to go to Employees and Payroll, and I'm going to run my payroll summary, and I'm going to run it as of the date of the actual check, which was 1/14. I'm going to refresh. And so 24 hours is what I had. And then here's where I'll be able to double check and make sure that my taxes are being filed correctly. So I would multiply my gross pay times 0.015 to check my Medicare, and times 0.062 to double check my Social Security and make sure that those rates are correct. Once I have verified that everything is correct, that is when I would send that information to Intuit. But I would always check that first just to make sure. And I would do that whether I am using enhanced payroll or assisted payroll. Even though assisted payroll, Intuit will pay all those taxes for you, you still want to verify that they're calculating correctly before you send that information to them. Okay. I said that I was going to show you where we enter the time to bring it in, and then we'll kind of come back here and finish this part out. So under employees, I can enter time using my weekly timesheet. So we're going to go into that, and I'm going to select my employee. And we're going to go backwards a few weeks by selecting previous. And you're able to see that those hours that I pulled in, those 24 hours, I can put that information in right here. So these are from my customer job list. I can select which job my employee worked on, what the service was that he did. In this case, he did site work. And then what payroll item I'm paying him. And then I can put in his time. And that's the information that we'll pull over onto the time card. Now, I can do this manually every week, and doing it for one employee, I have to admit, is not that hard. But if I have a bunch of employees and they're working all kinds of different jobs, that's going to be a lot of data entry. And that's where something like T-Sheets comes in, because the employees will be entering their time in using the T-Sheets module app on their phone or at their computer, and they can enter their time as they go for the week. And then at the end of the week, what I'm doing is just looking at the time and verifying it, making sure that everything makes sense before I run my payroll, versus having to have somebody enter all of that each and every day. So that could be a real time saver. In our next webinar, which is in February, we'll show you how that integration with T-Sheets happens and how that time gets pulled over. So make sure you look for that date coming up as well. Kelly, do we have a date on that one yet in February?
We have a tentative date. However, we will be sending out an email reminder by tomorrow. Everyone will be getting that date.
Perfect, perfect. So we can make sure that you don't miss that one coming up. Okay, so that's how I would enter my time. It's not a hard thing. I can do that at any point. And if I wanted to enter a single activity, I can do that. Or if I wanted to edit one, there's this option here. And what it'll do is it'll actually just pull up that time for a specific day. And I can look at it that way. But I think personally it's a lot easier just to do it on a sheet like this. Okay. Are there any questions so far about anything we've gone over that I need to show you? Ladies, do we have any questions?
No questions. It was, so far it's just really about your audio, so I think we overcame that challenge.
Okay.
So no questions so far, so proceed, please. Thank you.
Okay, good, perfect. All right. Okay, so we're back to our payroll summary, which we've already looked at and we verified. Now, from here, I have a couple of things to do. One is that I need to send this payroll to Intuit, so that way my taxes and my direct deposit information goes to them. So the taxes information gets pulled out if I'm on assisted payroll. If I'm in enhanced, I'm just sending the information for direct deposit purposes. But I also need to print my forms for my employees. So I'm going to go to File, my pay stubs. I'm going to click on Print Forms and go down here to Pay Stubs or Paychecks, depending on how they're being paid. I'm going to look at Pay Stubs right now, and it will show me that I have one pay stub to print out for Boz, and I'm able to do that. So if I wanted to preview that, this is what the pay stub looks like. And this information is about my company. Here's my employee information, the hourly wages, what their statuses are, where he's single, on his federal, and then we had the 2 withholding. The hourly wage, what he's made, current year-to-date amount, the deductions from gross, all the taxes that were paid, and then the adjustments to net pay, which was his wage garnishment, and then this company items that we paid, the company paid for him. So I'm able to put all of that on his timesheet, and that gives him all the information that he needs. All in his pay stub, I said timesheet. Okay, and then I would print that and give that to him. Also, the option of emailing that to my employees. If I didn't want to have to print the information, I can do that as well. So that's basically how I would go about running my payroll. Now, there are some ways that I can shortcut some of this, and we said we'd give you a couple of time savers. One of them definitely is T-Sheets. Using something like T-Sheets will allow you to have that time brought in, and you would not have to hand enter all of that time on a weekly basis. Another thing that you can do is you can set up some employee defaults. If I go under Edit, Preferences, and I would have to have this done before I set up any additional or new employees. If I go into Payroll and Employees and go over to Company Preferences, I have a place here that it says Employee Default. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. Now, what I did when before I set up my employee is I put in hourly wage at 22 and hourly wage overtime at 33. I put those in as that's the standard. Now, not every employee is going to be paid that. Maybe they'll be paid 15. But I've already got the template in place, so when I create a new employee, I don't have to worry about setting this information up. I can just go ahead and either alter it as needed, but it comes in for me. And I have this checked to use time data to create paychecks, so I don't have to worry about doing that again in the future. In addition, my deductions on my insurance, if I pay insurance for the majority of my employees, I can have that defaulted here with my rates as well. So that way I don't have to worry about setting it up on each employee again. One more thing I can do on my taxes, I can default to single. We're not going to necessarily change that, but I can go ahead in here, and where I don't have none right now, I would have to choose the state on each employee. If all of my employees are going to work in Oregon, I can go ahead and just update this and say that Oregon is where we're going to traditionally work, and Oregon is where they're going to be subject to withholding. That's going to save me a lot of time when setting that up. And again, I can bring in that Oregon company and put that rate in at 0.017 for the WBF. And the employee side, WBF, is 0.016. I am not going to have to worry about putting that into each one of my employees now. I've just saved myself a lot of time, especially if I have a lot of employees. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK and OK. So now let's go backwards and let's set up a new employee. So that way you're able to see the information that comes in. So I'm going to click on New Employee, and this is going to be Jack. My last name Huffman. And I'm going to put in the Social Security number. And gender, I'm going to go ahead and just put in as male. And the rest of this I'm going to worry about setting up later. I'm going to drop down to our payroll information and look at all of that came in. So if Jack doesn't make 22, I can easily change to his rate, and it will also update the overtime rate. On the taxes, I can get a change him from single to single 0 to single 1. State is already selected for me, so I'm just putting in single 1. That is already selected. I don't have to do anything here, and I'm done with that employee. Now I could also set up my defaults for my sick and vacation. I did not do that in my employee defaults, and so now it's telling me that I have to. So this is always a good reminder. If I need to go back to my employee defaults and set up everybody gets 40 hours of sick leave or 40 hours of vacation, I can go ahead and do that. I'm just going to say leave as is for now. So that's a way. That's a second way that we can save a whole lot of time on processing payroll. The third way that we find is more about what happens after the fact. So there's some reports that you can memorize just to make your life easier. So you saw that I pulled up that employees and payroll. So rather than having to necessarily go search for that every time and change the date, what I'm going to do is memorize this as my biweekly payroll run. So I'm going to put 114.16 as my payroll, and I'm going to go ahead and memorize this. I'm going to save it in a report and the report group of employees. So that's my weekly payroll summary, and I might even change that to biweekly, so that way I know that this is the one that I'm looking for. In addition, there's other reports that you can save that have to do with your liabilities, because we want to make sure that our liabilities get paid out each month. So one of the things that I like to do is go into reports, go to employees and payroll liability balances, and I like to look at these as a total because I want to make sure that everything is paid. So right now I can see that between these two dates I have some taxes that I need to pay. And that's because of my last payroll run, I left those there so that you can see them. So this is always a visual reminder to me that if this isn't zero, there's still some money that I need to pay. Okay? So that's a good report to have memorized as well. Any questions so far?
Yes, there is a question, and I think this is a perfect time for it. Thank you, Mindy, for your question. Can you email, the question is, Joy, can you email each staff their pay stub if you have multiple staff?
Yes, and what you do is when you email, you can set up the email to email each staff, and then what it does, each member, what it does is they have to have the first 4 digits of their last name and the last 4 digits of their social security number to open up their own pay stub. So that's a really good question.
And audience, if you do have a question, I just want to again remind you that there's a question mark right next to your name on the webinar pane. If you do have a question, click on that button and a dialog box will open up where you can key in your question, and I will read them off for Joy as they come in. So just a gentle reminder, we love questions, so please, if you have any questions, share them with us, and we'd love to answer them. So Joy, we can go ahead and proceed. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So I was on this page with my liabilities. I would also go ahead and memorize this, so that way I can make sure that these are all zeros at the end of my payroll. Now, obviously, something like health insurance I'm going to pay once a month, but those are the ones that I'm going to know about. The rest of these should all be being paid depending on my payroll schedule, my tax pay schedule. They should be paid either once a month or they should be paid on each payroll run. So that's really nice to have that feature. Okay, so I'm going to escape out of here. We've run our payroll. We've set up a new employee. I've showed you some of the reporting that you can use. Let's go through a few kind of crazy tips that we've got a little bit. So on the Payroll Center here, this is something that they've done new in the last couple of years. If you look at these 3 tabs, it'll show you just a variety of different things. In this particular case, I've got an orange flag. So this flag is telling me that I have paychecks that need to be printed. So if I was to click on this paycheck, it would actually pull them up and it would have me go ahead and print them. So that's what this little orange warning is about, is that those haven't been printed yet. On payroll liabilities, This is going to, depending on how I have my, if I'm on assisted or if I'm on enhanced, it's going to give me a schedule of the things that I need to pay, and I can pay those right out of here, which is nice. My payment history is going to keep track of all of the e-payments that I've made, as well as all the checks that I've run. There's all kinds of things that you can get to in here. And then same with your forms. Any forms that I need to file, so when it's time to do 941 or 940 or do my W-2s, I can do any of those forms from here. I'm pretty sure in one of the next couple of webinars we're going to actually go through processing a 941, so you're not going to want to miss that, doing our 941 and our OQ, and we'll do that on those employees that I've set up here. If I wanted to manage my filing methods, so if I wanted to set up e-filing, I can click in here, and so we want to do e-filing versus filing by paper, mailing it in. I can go ahead and come in here and set this up, and it'll walk me through the things that I need to do for compliance purposes, etc. So we're just going to look at that. It's going to say in this section, you learn how to choose to file your payroll forms. I'm going to say continue, and it's going to say, how do we want to do this? Are we filing as an accountant, reporting on behalf of the client, or are we a small business owner? Do we want to print and mail, or do we want to e-file? And so we're going to be able to just go ahead and set these up. I'm going to say next, and I'm saying e-file, and I'm going to say finish. And so now I'm selecting e-file. Well, it's not quite that simple. We also have to do the enrollment into it. And so they're going to require some information here from me. And so this is what I would start putting in, and I would be able to send this, fill in this information, and I'm going to send it. Once I have everything filled out here, I'm going to put in the officer's name, social security number, etc., and then submit it. And then that way, I'm able to e-file. You'll get something back from the IRS. I'm not actually going to do that, or my boss may not be happy with me. I am going to get something back from the IRS that is going to let me know within 48 hours what my status is on my e-filing, and then I should be getting a 10-digit PIN a few weeks afterwards. If you haven't set this up for this year's, you can do this. Hopefully you'll get it in time to be able to e-file for 2015. It could save you a lot of time, and it's something that we highly recommend. So I just wanted to show you that little tip. And I can also set up scheduling payments if I wanted to on any of my liabilities. So the things that assisted payroll is already going to be paying out is your taxes, your withholding taxes, your Medicare, your Social Security, etc. But on our wage garnishments or our health insurance, we can also set up projected payments on those. So we've got a lot of stuff that we can do in here. So this Payroll Center is really a nice feature, and you can kind of go through this and get familiar with what the different accounts are and what the different capabilities are. So get to know this. You can start paying electronically. So if we want to pay our, do our e-pay for our 941, which would be our federal withholding, our Medicare, and our Social Security, then we can set that up to start paying electronically, and we can do that right through QuickBooks versus having to go externally to the website to pay that. Now, Oregon's not set up that way yet, but you can do it with federal. So it is one less step to have to do. So QuickBooks has just really been stepping it up and making all of these things available for you to do in-house. In addition, you have some hiring forms up here. So you have that I-9 that I referred to earlier. There's also the W-4 that people can fill out for their withholding. There's a 1099 for vendors, a W-9 here for vendors, and then there's a direct deposit authorization. So these forms here are available, so don't recreate the wheel. Just go ahead and use what they have in here. Have your employees fill out that information, and then you can have everything that you need to get set up, to get your payroll set up. Okay. So that is about what I've got for today, unless we have other questions. And I know we have some polls, so I'm going to kick it back to either Kelly or Adrian, and you let me know what if there's any other questions, and I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for taking time today to be with me and kind of go over the basics of setting up payroll and making sure things are being done the correct way. If you have any questions at any time, or if you want somebody to look over your payroll setup, please call us at EBS. We'd love to spend an hour with you, or 15 minutes or half an hour, just looking over your payroll items to make sure that everything's set up correctly. It's really important and can save you a lot of time in the future. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Joy. This is Adrienne. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us throughout the presentation. Fantastic presentation, Joy. What is the difference between leaning on EBS for payroll support and, let's say, calling Intuit? Is there any differentiation between supporting them as a customer as a whole and their company with EBS than, you know, the one-off calls to Intuit?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing with working with somebody at EBS, first of all, is you have, even if you don't work with us on a weekly basis, but you have somebody who is really doing kind of some hands-on looking onto what it is that you've got set up. Everybody's payroll is different. Everybody has different types of garnishments and withholdings and additions, and you really need somebody who can kind of take a look at it, and that's what we do. I mean, we are pro advisors in the areas of doing payroll and setting stuff up. So having someone to be able to do that with you is great. Intuit has a lot of, they can help you with the structural portion of it, making sure that you have your payroll key codes, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of, some of the people are very qualified to answer payroll questions, but majority of them would tell you to talk with a professional such as ourselves. So we can help walk you through that process and try to make it as painless as possible. So good question.
And just outside looking in, you know, you have other applications too that might enhance a QuickBooks user's environment, and you can kind of, you know, make the connections between the 2 or 3 different applications that might touch payroll. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Like maybe T-Sheet.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if Fishbowl touches payroll, but, you know, if there's other applications that you might recommend for that particular QuickBooks user that might be outside of Intuit, I think that would be a place that you guys can differentiate yourself as well as payroll experts.
Absolutely. Yes, of course. We also, we have several of us, including myself, who are certified as T-Sheets experts. And that is that third-party app that I've referred to a few times in today's webinar, talking about having that integrate with your payroll. That can be such a time savings, and literally it's just got so many features, including tracking. It has GPS tracking in it. So there's a lot of people, a lot of clients that I have that just love that feature. So using something like that, that may not be a conversation you would have with somebody from Intuit. If you work with a company like ours, EBS, we have that knowledge base and have those people that are skilled and professionals in those areas. So yes, T-Sheets is one of them. Field Service Management is another one, which is a company that I work very closely with. They also do service and dispatch, but they do have a time card module. So our job at EBS is to not just know QuickBooks, but to also know the things that can help make your business run smoother that would tie into QuickBooks, any one of those third-party apps. Now,
and I'm seeing that 50% of the folks in the audience have voted. I love to get that up to 100%. So if you could just take a second and answer this question on the webinar screen. How do you process payroll today? In-house, manual, QuickBooks assisted payroll, bookkeeper, CPA, or other? That would be extremely helpful to us. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let this one stay on for a little bit. Let me check and see if there's any new questions. I don't see any new questions. Joy, how long does it take to get somebody set up on QuickBooks Payroll? Is it does it depend on how many employees they have? What goes on? What do you go through when you initially have somebody inquire and is interested in having you help them with payroll? And B, how long does it take to get them up and running? And C, what are some of the costs associated with that? Joy? Do we still have you?
Joy, do we have you?
I think she might have fell off the audio.
No problem. So while we're waiting for Joy to get back on, Adrienne, I'll kind of jump in as far as the costs associated. So please feel free to reach out to me regarding the specific costs for assisted payroll as well as enhanced payroll. Assisted payroll is $79 per month plus $2 per employee per pay period. The enhanced payroll for the first year is $273 per year plus $2 per employee per month. Each for assisted and enhanced. If you have employees that live outside of the state, for each additional state, it's $12 per month. T-sheets, again, we can get you a cost comparison. It just truly depends. I'll just need to know the number of employees that you have and how often you process payroll, and I'd be happy to get you over those costs. I can tell you, Joy is probably going to be a little bit better as far as the timeline for getting all set up. Right now is Intuit's busiest time of year to get your payroll PIN activated. So don't wait until the last minute, the last few hours of the day, because we do need to get that payroll PIN from them. And their lines are swamped right now. So just plan ahead. Right now is the perfect time because year end just happened. So if you guys are interested, just feel free to reach out to EBS.
And Kelly, can you guys expedite all of that, their payroll PIN and everything for them with Intuit, or is that something? Oh, go ahead.
Yep, absolutely. As far as the service key and the payroll PIN, we can help you expedite that process. So please reach out to us, utilize your local reseller here, and we would be happy to help.
And it looks like Joy is back. Joy, can you hear me?
I can. I lost you there. Sorry, I don't know what happened.
We lost you, but we're so happy you're back. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close out this poll. We did have a question, Joy, about what the payroll process setup looks like, how long it takes to get somebody up and running. Kelly did answer. Thank you so much, Kelly, for answering the questions regarding the costs. So if we could get a clear elaboration on the setup process, Joy, and the length of time, what's kind of entailed at a high level?
Sure, that's a great question. So as far as the time that it's going to take, the biggest thing that we have that we need to make sure that we have in the front end, and this is where you're going to save the time, is if you have all of that information that we showed you in that first payroll checklist as far as the W-4s and the direct deposit information, et cetera. If you have all of that information, it's going to take a lot less time. I'll tell you that much. So having that stuff all set up, we could probably walk through the whole process with you, normally in about an hour and a half to 2 hours at the most. And those would be broken into 2 different sessions, the first of which is making sure all the payroll is set up correctly. So again, having that information on the front end really helps. The second is when we do what we have to, we contact Intuit, we get the payroll key, set that up. But then it takes about 48 hours for them to activate your bank account. Once that's done, then we come back in, we finalize the setup, and we connect it with you to assisted payroll. There are 2 different meeting times that we have to set up to get that done in full. But it doesn't take that long to get the whole thing done. And I say 2 hours just to give ourselves enough time. If you have everything pre-set up and it's all done correctly as much as it can be, it could take less time than that.
And Joy, what are some of the biggest payroll setup mistakes that you've seen when people try to do these things on their own? Can you share some of that with us?
Absolutely. That's a great question because we see a lot of things come through. The biggest things that I normally see is either when somebody sets up a payroll item, how we did the quick add, they either forget to select that it's overtime, or they forget to put that it's a compensation versus an addition. A lot of mistakes are made when it comes to like mileage reimbursements or car allowances or those types of things. You really want to make sure that those are hitting the payroll summary in the correct places so that they're taxed accordingly. Also, health insurance is a big one. Everyone assumes that every health insurance is pre-tax. That's not the case. So some of that is part of it is knowing the laws and knowing how they read. but a lot of it just also has to do with the setup and not making assumptions that just because I'm paying this, then it has to come out of my gross pay. Well, no, sometimes it comes out of net pay. So having somebody walk through that with you and spending a little bit of time going through that, guiding you, really can save a lot of headaches down the road.
Seems like there could be hours and hours of correction if you're not careful and just setting it up right to begin with.
Correct. Yeah, by for sure, spending a couple hours on the front end can save you hours and hours of correction and save you, lots and lots of fees on the back end if things aren't set up properly. So that's our recommendation, is get it done. And we're in a new year, so this is a perfect time. So even if you've been doing payroll for a number of years in your current QuickBooks, sitting with somebody with EBS or meeting with them over the phone and having them review and making sure everything is calculating the right way, those couple hours could save you a lot of headaches in the future.
And I do see that 50% of the audience has voted. This is our last poll. So let's try to get to 100% of you if we can. If you could answer this question, are you interested in learning more about Intuit Payroll? And I'm going to check and see if we have any more questions. Okay, we do have another question, Joy. Exactly, if we can elaborate, what's the difference between enhanced Intuit Payroll and assisted Intuit Payroll? If you could just review that quickly.
Sure, great question. I'm going to go over the features, and then I'll ask Kelly to kind of talk to you a little bit about the pricing, because there is a difference in pricing. So for enhanced payroll, what that is that literally just kind of brings in the tax tables. And so what that does is, as you're processing your payroll and you send that to it, you're going to go ahead and release all of your liabilities. So you're going to be responsible for paying your Oregon liabilities and your IRS liabilities, your federal liabilities, versus assisted payroll. They do that for you. Assisted payroll will also process your quarterly forms for you, so you don't have to do that as well. And then they do the year-end W-2s. So that can be a really nice feature. Obviously, there's an added cost for doing assisted payroll, but again, the biggest difference is, are you releasing your own tax liabilities, or are they doing it for you? There is a cost advantage to doing it yourself, but you miss one payment, it may end up paying for itself in the long run. So depending on the amount of employees and whatever your schedule is that you're paying your taxes on, meet with one of our EBS employees, and then they can kind of make a recommendation. But we really like assisted payroll because of the fact that it just takes care of all of that for you. Makes it a lot easier. And Kelly, do you have some of the pricing, the differences on pricing on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Joy. So the pricing for assisted payroll is $79 per month plus $2 per employee per pay period. The price for enhanced payroll, it's for the first year is $273 per year plus $2 per employee per month. Both enhanced and assisted charge an additional fee if you have employees that live outside of the state, so it's $12 per state per month.
And you guys did mention Oregon, and I think that's because you're located there. That's not to say that you wouldn't be able to help companies residing outside of Oregon. It would be state-specific as far as the Intuit forms and such, correct?
Correct. So yeah,
that
so
is
we
correct.
have
Yes.
Yeah, we have clients all over the U.S.
So you can help somebody in New York just as you can help somebody in Oregon.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions, and we are a little bit early. We have 6 more minutes. I'm going to go ahead and close out this poll. I just have 50% of you who have voted. Can we get the rest of you to vote? I'm going to leave it up there for another 10 seconds. If you guys could just quickly vote. If you're interested in learning more about Intuit Payroll, then you're definitely going to get a personal call from Kelly and just talk with you a little bit and see to what degree that might fit your needs moving forward. So if you answer yes here, you'll get a phone call from Kelly. So I'm going to give you just another moment of opportunity and then we'll close that one out. I'm up to 67%. Can I get another
Adrian,
vote?
I do just want to add on, if we didn't cover everything that you guys were looking for today, or if you have any outstanding questions, just feel free to either give me a call or send me over an email. My email address is Kelly, Kelli, at teachmequickbooks.com, and I'll make sure that all of your questions are answered. So please feel free to reach out to me.
And just another side note, Kelly, I will be sending out an email on your behalf to anyone who registered for this webinar. So all of you on this webinar, you will be getting Kelly's contact information in your email box, and also a recording of this presentation as a follow-up. And with that said, I'm going to close this poll out and share the results of that poll. It looks like 75% of you are interested in learning more. And I'm going to close that out and see. Kelly, do you have a contact screen? If you see that there is teachmequickbooks.com on the bottom, and there's the phone number. But here's Kelly's contact information, and I'll be sending this as a follow-up in an email. And we just really appreciate everybody's time with us today, and we definitely will be in touch. Thank you very much. Kelly and Joy, is there any final remarks that you'd like to share?
I don't think so.
Just we will be, yes, thank you. And we'll be sending out our next invitation to continue on with this payroll series for our February date. So just please stay tuned. And if you have anything in particular that you would like to see for our future webinars, again, please send me an email at kelly@teachmequickbooks.com. So thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.